This is kind of crazy because I have to re-upload this video to discuss the sentence 会社員ですか from page 6 of Minna no Nihongo because they made a copyright claim on the basis that I used a screenshot of Minna no Nihongo. But anyway, back to the content. 会社員ですか Are you a company's employee? Is a pretty strange thing to say, and most of us wouldn't say in this context. So, what's the context here? Well, this is from the first chapter of Minna no Nihongo, where they introduce yourself like, I'm Mike Miller. Are you a student? 学生ですか? So that's the context. And 会社員 is for somebody who works for a company as an employee. And we don't typically ask 会社員ですか? Are you a company's employee? To somebody we just met. And there's actually a better word for this, which is 社会人, which is somebody who's no longer a student and who has a job, especially a full-time job. 社会 means society, 人 means person. So it's kind of like a society person, as in a full participant of the society. So you can ask 社会人ですか? And that's perfectly natural. Or you can say 学生ですか? 社会人ですか? Are you a student or do you already have a job? So 会社員 is a little too specific. If you own a business, you're not 会社員, but you are 社会人. If you are a freelancer, as in like a freelance software engineer, you're not a 会社員, but you're 社会人. If you are a YouTuber, you're not a 会社員, you're unemployed. So use 社会人. But of course, 会社員 is a legit word, and we use it in some other situations. For example, you can say something like 会社員を辞めてフリーランスになりました. I quit being an employee and I became a freelancer. That's fine. Or if you have a friend who used to say, oh, I want to quit being a 会社員 and I want to start a business. And you see him after a couple of years, you can ask, まだ会社員やってる? Are you still an employee? Have you already started your business? And that's perfectly natural. Now, I asked other native Japanese speakers because this can be subjective, and all of them said, yeah, we wouldn't usually ask 会社員ですか in this context. And one of them said something pretty interesting. She said, oh, I wouldn't even ask 社会人ですか? Instead, I would ask お仕事は何ですか? What job do you have? Or お仕事は何してますか? What do you do? And that makes perfect sense because let's say you play an online game and you meet a bunch of people there and you don't really know who they are, but then you guys decide to meet up in person. Now you have a diverse group of different age groups and genders. And if someone looks young enough to be a student, you can just ask, 学生ですか? But if someone looks old enough to be a 社会人, you can just ask, お仕事は何ですか? What do you do? And it's kind of similar in English because they don't really ask you, are you a company's employee when they just met you? They probably just ask you, what do you do? Because you totally look like a normal functional adult who doesn't spend 3 hours on X arguing with their followers. And when somebody asks you, 学生ですか? Because you look young and fresh like me, you can say, yeah, 社会人です. No, I have a job. Here's a real life example. ちなみには学生社会人。
社会人です。
I asked them because they look young enough to be 学生, but old enough to be 社会人. Another interesting phrase I got from another native speaker is 学生さんですか? Are you a student? Which sounds a little more polite than 学生ですか? But 学生ですか is also perfectly fine. It's not rude. And also, even if you want to say something like 会社員, there's actually a more common word that we use all the time. And can you guess what that is? Well, that is Salaryman, which means somebody who gets paid a salary by a company, so pretty similar to 会社員. So when somebody looks at me, they might not think I'm a typical Japanese salaryman. So they can ask, 普通のサラリーマンですか? Are you a normal salaryman? And I can say, いや、ビジネスやってます. No, I have my own business. And you can also make お仕事は何ですか? What do you do? Extra respectful. For example, if you work at the bank and your customer is applying for a loan and you want to ask them what they do, you can say, お仕事は何されてますか? What do you do? And されてる doing is extra respectful than してる doing. And by the way, してる is a contraction of している and されてる is a contraction of されている. And if you want to learn how to speak Japanese with normal human beings rather than Mike Miller, you should subscribe to my email group because I have both free and paid lessons where I teach you natural and practical Japanese using realistic examples, like how we speak Japanese exactly without being rude. So click on the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta. またね